Welcome to the women's panel. This is the 17th edition of the panel that was created by Madeline Hammond and myself. She has spearheaded the panel for 17 years, and I am so thrilled to welcome the panelists. Dana Murray, producer for the Oscar animated film Soul. Elvira Lind, director of the nominated The Letter Room. Garrett Bradley, Oscar nominated for director, producer of the documentary Time. Corey Ray, producer of the animated film Onward. Madeline Sharafian, writer, director of the Oscar nominated short Pixar's Burrow. Michelle Kutelink, Academy Award nominated sound mixer for Sound of Metal. Tiara Thomas, Oscar nominated singer-songwriter for the song Fight for You, which you heard while you were waiting for the panel to start. And Trish Somerville, costume designer, Academy Award nominated for Mank. Please welcome Madeline Hammond, your moderator. It's up to you, Madeline.
And welcome to all of our fine panelists. I'm so happy everyone is with us today, and we're going to have fun. We only have an hour, so let me tell you how the flow is going to go, if I could. We are going to, I'm going to introduce everybody, just 2 or 3 little factoids. Then we're going to ask each person 4 or 5 questions about their film, and then we're going to have time to do a quick round robin of interesting questions. All right. So let us just jump into it if we could. And by the way, before I start, I just wanted to say what a nice mix of panelists we have in terms of what they do in the industry. We have 3 producers, 2 writer-directors, a costume designer, a re-recording / sound mixer, and a co-writer of a song. We haven't had this kind of mix in the 17 years we've been doing it, so I'm delighted to have that. So let us start with Dana Murray. Dana, give us a wave.
Dana, go first?
Yes, you have to go first. We did it alphabetically by first name, so you have no choice. All right. Okay. Dana is the producer of Soul, as Roger said, Oscar nominated, and she's joined Pixar 20 years ago as a desk production assistant on Finding Nemo, and since then has done various jobs, including art coordinator, lighting designer, production manager, and ultimately producer. Next is Elvira Lind. Hi, Elvira, director of The Letter Room, nominated for Best Live Action Short Film. Born in Copenhagen, went to college in Cape Town, and now lives in New York. She's worked at doing directing and shooting docs of various lengths for both film, television, and the web. She's won many awards for all of her docs, and The Letter Room, though, is her first fiction debut. And she's up for an Oscar, so right out of the gate. Here's another interesting statistic. Get this, no female director has ever won a Best Live Action Short Film since 2004. There's more female directors doing short films than features, but they've never won. So let's hopefully this year we can change that. All right. Next is Garrett Bradley. Hello, Garrett, director, producer of Time, nominated for Best Documentary Feature. As Roger said, works across narrative, documentary, and experimental modes of filmmaking, often focusing on themes including race, class, social justice, family relationships. Garrett became the first African-American woman to win the Best Director Award in the U.S. documentary competition for Time. And that was just the first of many wins she's accumulated on the way, including, might I say, at Sundance, Best Director. She's also worked with David DuVernay on When They See Us, the award-winning limited series about Central Park 5. Next up is Corey Ray, producer of Onward, Oscar-nominated Best Animated Feature Film. She joined Pixar 28 years ago. I would think you're one of the earliest hires. Am I right?
Yeah, pretty early on. Yeah. Yep.
Pretty early on. Corey has a background in education and coaching, which of course is perfect for a producer. And like other Pixarites, you've worked in various roles, including animation manager, associate producer, pre-production producer, and ultimately producer of Onward. Excuse me. Okay, Madeline Sharafian, writer-director of Burrow, the Best Animated Short Film, Oscar nominated. You joined Pixar 8 years ago and then returned 2 years later as a storyboard artist on the Academy Award winning film Coco. And she also worked as a story lead on Pixar's film Onward, in addition to doing Burrow. And Michelle, re-recording mixer, nominated for Best Sound for the Oscars, first Mexican sound engineer who has been nominated for an Oscar. So I just want to pause on that. That's pretty amazing. She's worked as a dialogue editor, re-recording mixer on over 100 films for the past 15 years in Mexico City. And she also worked on Roma, and her very first film was Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth. Tiara Thomas, singer-songwriter, multi-platinum artist, Grammy Award winner, songwriter, skilled producer, and guitarist. Nominated for Best Achievement in Music Written for Motion Picture for her song Fight for You, which you heard. By the way, co-wrote it with her and DeMille.
DeMille.
DeMille. You and DeMille also wrote I Can't Breathe, for which was inspired, of course, by George Floyd, which just won a Grammy. And last but not least is Miss Trish Somerville, costume designer for Mank. Oscar nominated for Best Achievement in Costume Design. Has many film and television credits, including Girl with Dragon Tattoo, Hunger Games, Gone Girl, Westworld. And I love this about you, Trish. You designed your very own collection inspired by Dragon Tattoo. I can only imagine what that was. And the Hunger Games for H&M stores and sold out in record time. So welcome. All right. How are we doing so far? All right. Now, in the hot seat. And not the hot seat. We just want to hear about your film. So we're going to start with you, Corey. First, if you could, give us just a very quick overview of the film for those that may not have seen it.
Cool. Yeah. Onward is a really personal story for my directing partner, Dan Scanlon. And it's basically the story of two elf brothers who go on a modern day quest to try to spend one more day with their father who had passed away years ago. So it's a modern fantasy quest film about loss and about really looking around and appreciating those people that are around and who have helped you become who you are.
So Corey, let me ask you about that, because I love that it deals with issues like loss, and I think it's important not to shy away from themes like this. But did you have any concerns, or as a producer, did you discuss with Dan and others and ultimately came to the decision to go for it?
Yeah, one of the most amazing things about Pixar, and you'll probably hear this from the other producers, is that we're really encouraged to tell personal stories, and no matter what the difficulty or challenge of the themes are, and loss is something that we all deal with, that children deal with, and so we wanted to approach it from the point of view that's related to Dan, who basically as an adult realized that he didn't so much miss having a father because his brother was actually playing a father role for him. And so that was the epiphany that we kind of came to while we were developing the story. And so I think kind of shining that light on those people who are around us and not necessarily focusing on the loss or the death was kind of instrumental in making it both universal and a little bit more palatable, perhaps.
And to follow up on what you mentioned about the very human stories, yes, Pixar is known for that, and they've done toys and monsters. But I must ask you, why elves? What went into the decision to make the characters elves?
Yeah, why, Maddie? No, it's I think because we needed magic in the film, to be honest, and so in order to have magic, we kind of figured one place that would be believable would be in a fantasy world. And we didn't really want to do a period piece. So we thought, well, what about a modern fantasy? And it's kind of a modern story. And so we thought, what about a modern fantasy world? And then then we went through all the characters that are in fantasy films. And we were like, okay, well, which ones can really emote and that we could get behind to tell such a personal story? And we came up with elves. So
I love it. Now, is this right? Is this Pixar's first foray into the fantasy world?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it was. Yep.
And I wanted to ask you also, about some of the voice casting. Lena Waithe, Octavia Spencer, Ali Wong, among many, many other great names. Do you feel that there's more inclusivity happening now within voice casting? Are you seeing a change?
Yeah, for sure, and I hope so across the board. And what we're learning, at Pixar is that it starts on the page and it starts in the story room, and that's where you have to start creating the characters who are diverse, and so that by the time you get to actual casting, you have those characters in place, and you know that your world is already robust and exemplifies the world around us. So we're working hard to kind of keep at that and hold ourselves to that. So
Good. Yes, I see others doing it as well, which is great.
yeah.
All right, Kiara, you're up next. Let's first, may I ask you, how did you get involved with Judas and the Black Messiah? Did you go to them? Did they come to you? I always like to hear the story of how the connection occurred.
Well, with Judas and the Black Messiah, I was actually working with her. She's like her, the artist, her. She's like my little sister. I've been working with her since she was like 15 years old. And so we have hundreds of songs together. We were working on her album actually. And she was like, "Hey, they want me to do this song for this movie called Judas and the Black Messiah." And so we just watched the movie in the studio. It was literally the same week we were working on her album. I think the next day, we watched the movie in the studio, and they gave us very, very few directions. They said they didn't want the song to be sad because this movie does end on, a sadder note. So they said they wanted it to feel hopeful. So we sat in the studio after watching the movie and we listened to just music from that period. Curtis Mayfield, Marvin Gaye, and we just kind of, gotten a little groove. And yeah, we just start writing this song. D Mile, who you mentioned earlier, he's actually the producer that worked with both her and I on Fight for You and the Grammy-winning song you were talking about, I Can't Breathe. But
Right.
yeah, so it was really fun. We wanted to make something upbeat, something that felt hopeful and inspirational. And so, yeah, it was really exciting. They really loved the song and they wanted to change one word.
Wow.
One word. I can't remember what the one word was, but they wanted to change one word and we changed that. And yeah, so it's pretty crazy. I never woke up and thought, I'm going to be nominated for an Oscar, because I'm a singer. So it's
Right.
pretty crazy. I'm just happy to be here.
Well,
awesome.
and let me ask you, when you're in take yourself back to that screening room. You heard DeMille Whirl in there watching the film. It's the first time that the Fred Hampton story had ever really been done. So in addition to loving the film though, did you feel an additional sense of responsibility to it had to mean something extra special, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I had no idea about the Fred Hampton story before watching the movie. I knew about the Black Panther Party, but I did not know about Fred Hampton. That's not something you learn in Black history, like in school or anything. So, and
Right.
just knowing that he was 21 years old when he was assassinated. And so yeah, it definitely shook me up. The movie, it shook me up a lot. I went home that night. I was at home at like 3 o'clock in the morning in the dark, looking at my phone, laying in the bed, trying to find any type of article or documentary or anything I could find information about him, because I just was like, how come this story, well, it's being told now, but how come this story is just not being told? It was so crazy. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was
Well,
definitely hit home for
timing's everything because this is the year, and Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield and Dominique Fishback all did such a great job. So
They did
I wanted
that. Yeah.
to ask you though. You had mentioned before when you were talking about her. So you and your do you like the collaboration of it all? I feel like that for a singer songwriter like yourself, is that your preferred way of doing it, is to have someone to do it with?
Well, I usually write all my songs myself. Me as an artist, I write all my songs myself. But with her, like I said, it's such an organic work environment because I've been working with her ever since the name Her was even thought of, you know? And so it's just kind of fun for us. It's fun. We're not trying to, we weren't trying to win awards, or, you know, we were just trying to make good songs, really cool songs. And so it always comes very organic. She's my favorite artist to work with. That's the artist that I work with the most outside of myself. So yeah, I love what we both each bring to the table. I think we both think the same as far as we both care about our lyrics a lot. That's something that's really important to me, how you're telling the story, you know, and I know that's really important to her too. So we really try to make sure we really, really think about good lyrics and not just stuff that rhymes. You know, we really
Right.
try to tell a story and paint a picture, and we're both that way. So that's why it's just so fun working with her.
Tell a story and evoke emotion, because that's, I think, what's great about your work.
Exactly.
You feel something.
Yes.
So, last question for you is: you had mentioned Curtis Mayfield. Were there some other musical inspirations that you looked to or you got familiar with to help you in your writing of the song?
This song in particular, Fight for You?
I'll fight for you.
No. Yeah, really, no. That's all we listen to. I mean, we listen to actually a lot of Marvin Gaye, and yeah, we like the sound of that those percussion sounds, with very raw, organic percussion sounds that were used in music in the 70s. It's just a whole different sound and a whole different vibe. And we wanted to kind of recreate that type of vibe. So yeah, we really just stayed in the 70s.
That's great. That's my generation, so I like it. Some respect.
I like that
Very
kind of music too. My dad put me onto that, you know, Elton John
great.
and David Bowie and that kind of stuff.
Right. The best music. All right. So
Yeah.
we're going to go into the world of costume designs. If we could, Trish, you're next. So Trish, you've worked doing
Right.
costumes in all different kinds of genres, but this is the first 30s, 40s period piece. So I was just wondering, was that exciting to you? Were you like, oh, great, this is a whole other something new that I haven't done before? Tell us about that.
Definitely. I mean, I definitely enjoy working with Fincher. You know, I mean, he kind of makes you do, you know, rise to the occasion and do your very best. And so that was a plus. And then it being a period film, which I hadn't done. I'd done a bit of period work in videos and commercials, but not 30s and 40s. And then the layer of, you know, it all being in black and white and shot in black and white. So all of that was a big plus for me. You know, I mean, I like to be challenged in a lot of different ways. So to have something new to kind of try and shift my thinking was really, you know, was really fun. It was a great project. You know, it was like we got to do every kind of walk of life in the film, not just kind of what a lot of people think of like Hollywood glamour, but you know, so that's what also made it fun, was to have this
Good.
scale of all the people we were addressing.
Now, you mentioned that you'd worked with David Fincher before. Now, I know him to be very detail oriented. So was it nice having him to collaborate with? Was it very much a kind of a back and forth process, or did he just say go with it and come back to me when you're done?
He does like he gets a lot. I think he gets a bad rap in a lot of ways. Like he's definitely precise, but I think the precision comes more in like all the technical parts of it and with the camera, and definitely in rehearsals. But you always know what you're doing for the day. It never kind of goes off the rails in any kind of way, or like we're scrapping that and we're going to go here. But he definitely gives you lots of freedom. You know, that's one of the reasons I really enjoy working with him, is because he kind of talks you through the whole story, and then just says, okay, now go and let me see, come back with some stuff, you know? So he's like really cool about just allowing you to create.
That's that's the way it should be. That's perfect. Now let's talk
It
about the
should. And I
character.
do think, oh,
Oh,
sorry, go
please.
ahead.
No, no, you go.
Oh, no, but I think that's kind of, you know, I think that's kind of, you know, why he can make the films that he does, because he hires people that he trusts and he has this respect, and you know, and then you do want to work hard and do a really great job, and then you do get all this freedom. So a lot of people, you know, continually want to go back and work with him, and that's kind of where I'm at. I really enjoy working with him.
Well, I think you just kind of hit it. It's about a trust level and having a shorthand. And once that's established, I think that's why he likes working with the same people, because you just know they got your back and they're going to do the best job, which you did. But I must ask you about the character that Amanda Seyfried plays with Marion Davies. I read that there was a ton of publicity photos, and I just wondered, as you were looking at all of them, was there like a particular look that inspired you to go in a specific direction, or did you just decide, okay, I'm going to just do my own thing? Like, tell us about that process.
There's a little bit of both. There are a lot of photographs of her in her personal life, and then at work, and with Hearst. But so what I wanted to do with her, because we have outside of when we're in the 40s with Mank, we have women there that are with him. But in the earlier stuff in the 30s, we only kind of have Sarah, Mank's wife, and then Marion Davies. And since Marion was an actress and kind of the starlet, I just wanted to always keep her in light tones and really light colors so that, she was kind of the first thing Mank would ever see when he entered a room. So the thing that I kind of found through a lot of the imagery of her is, ironically, for her age and the era and being with her, she did wear a lot of trousers. So I wanted to kind of show that in the independence of that. And so we did that in her circus costume, that she's in these really big palazzo pants. But and then there was another photograph that inspired me for when she exits MGM. There's an image I found where she's standing on the by next to a car that was a gift to her, and she has this big coat on with a big collar. And so when she left MGM, I kind of wanted to mirror that image, but it was only really that and the circus costume that we found images of, that we kind of went very closely to. Everything else was just pieces that I designed, from what I thought would work well on Amanda and what would work well for the scenes.
Did you ever count how many costumes you did? I would
No,
have to think it was
no.
more than any other film because of the dinners and everything. That's
Yeah.
crazy. Well, let me ask you this. Was there one
Yeah.
costume that you did that you were really proud of? That you were like, oh my God, this has got it. Not that you have a favorite, but one that was the hardest to do.
I mean, it could be the gold lame gown that she wears, because it was the challenge of lame is quite hard to sew, and I had an amazing cutter fitter named Marilyn Madsen, and that's somebody who I'll drape the dress and then she cuts it and does the pattern, and then we have stitchers that sew it. So kind of getting that fit really right, and then we ran into the issue of we only had so much fabric. So I was just, kind of gently reminding Amanda to be gentle with the dress, and so she wears it for a couple of probably 4 days. I think we shot it, and it was all fine until, Dave's like, oh, and then she's gonna like take her shoes off. So in my head, I'm like, okay, I want the dress long enough so we don't see her feet, but then I need to put a loop on it so she can put it on her arm when she takes her shoes off. And he goes, oh, and then she bends down and she grabs a flask out of this bench, and I'm like, okay, so she's kneeling on it now. And then he goes, and then she's going to hop up on this fountain and walk. And then that's when I was like, oh my God, she's hopping on a fountain. And so knowing that I didn't have enough fabric to cut 2 dresses, we just cut enough to have a couple panels. And I think it was the second or third day, Amanda was sitting in the scene. And when she got up at the end of the scene, she stood up and put her shoe through the back of the dress. And so that night we had to stay and change out the panel of the back of the dress. So that was probably just the most challenging in that way of being afraid of what could happen to the dress.
And then it happened.
And then it happened. At least you didn't fall in the fountain.
That's right. Oh gosh, I could see her now. Like, oh, my shoe just went through the dress, Trish.
She didn't
Trish went,
know. She didn't know. No, she just got up and walked away. And I was like, oh, it's a huge hole in the back of your dress.
well, there you go. That was your night. All right. Well, Miss Elvira, pardon me, excuse me. Tell us about the letter room, where the idea came from, and then just a little short description, and then we'll go into some more questions.
All right. So the letter room is about Richard, who is he's a correctional officer in a prison, and he gets excuse me, he gets moved to a new job. He wants to work in human relations, which doesn't really exist in this prison, and he gets moved to a job in the letter room, which is then the human relations of that place. And there, he's a very lonely man he's looking for some kind of stimulation in his life, and he gets really involved in the letter reading, that he's supposed to scan the letters of inappropriate content, and then gets very emotionally invested in this one particular woman's letters to her boyfriend on death row. And then he sort of decides to take matter into his own hands when he worries that he's in danger. So that's the short version.
Well, I can tell you from having watched it not once but twice, it was very emotional because you're right. He's very lonely. He lives alone. He works alone in the letter room, and he eats alone, and it's just such a just it's. I encourage you to watch it twice. I saw something different the second time I saw it, so I just want to put that out. Now, can you tell us about who plays Richard, the lead actor? Can I brag about him? He's the fabulous Oscar Isaac. And I wanted to ask, not only are you married to him, but what was it like directing? And particularly, well, because you guys have worked together for many years and have a production company, but were you able to turn it off when you got home, or was it constantly in your head?
I mean, because it was in my head all the time, because I was just like in this other world. But I think we had a lot of fun doing it together. I mean, I was also 7 months pregnant when we were shooting, so that was like an add-on of like extra challenge. We did look at each other when we were going into this production, like, is this a terrible mistake? Because it was just a lot of challenges. And we had a 2-year-old at home, and then me with a lot of hormones going into a prison during a heat wave in the summer, 2019, and then shooting a short that was a very long short in 5 days. And one of the days we shot in an active prison, so it was just kind of crazy. But he was just, yeah, we had a really good time. I mean, he's such an incredible actor, so it was also quite luxurious to get to work with him and Alia and John Douglas. I mean, it was just an amazing group of people that I got to work with. So that was, I don't know, that helped a lot through all that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yes, because you had so many other things going on at the same time, but maybe this was good. It got your mind, could let you focus on it. Well, let's talk for a second about the length of it, since you mentioned that, because it's a little over 30 minutes long. Was there a stage during the process that you guys discussed the length of it, and what made you ultimately determine to make it that length?
I mean, everyone tried to encourage me to make it shorter because it's a little bit challenging when it's so long, especially for like doing festivals and all these things. But I didn't really think about it that way. I had written it, and when I started writing, I had so many other ideas that I wanted to do, and I had been walking around with this story for such a long time in my mind. And I do documentary films, so I was like, I'm never going to make fiction, but maybe if I were, I was going to make this story. But I had all these ideas, and I started writing, and I'd never really written fiction before, and I could see I was sitting off on like this grand journey that would have taken, the film would be very, very long. So I had to even like cut back and like figure out what's the core. And then it was still very long. So, and then in the edit room, I also feel like the film really needed the pauses. We needed to be in the space with him and feel the loneliness. I also wanted the prison, I didn't want to be like a high suspense prison drama. I wanted to tell a story also about the endless routines, the dragging out, and like the just time passing, and you're just wasting your life away in here, as well as the people working there also having it. I just wanted to create that feeling. So it needed time to breathe. You needed to be in these feelings of just like extended moments that just feels like they have no end and no beginning, or actions being that, you know, like someone cooking a meal, eating, and the silence of that. So in a short when you have to go a little more quick, but I don't know, it needed those.
Well, and also
moments.
by having the longer version, you were, as a person watching, you were able to connect emotionally because you had to see it. You really felt the characters, and you weren't rushed in that, right? So did you do research by going, so 7 months pregnant, super hot, and meanwhile, were you visiting other prisons doing research? I can't imagine.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of, yeah, it was like my producer, Sophia, and I went to visit prison. I really wanted to also just like the feeling of walking around with someone that worked there. And I was really interested in seeing also, was there anyone that worked in a place like this that had some of that energy that Richard has? I think, and Oscar was he was a little doubtful. He was like, I don't think you're going to find anyone like that. I did actually meet someone that had a lot, that really believed that he was doing something good. And it was just very interesting to see him, like how he would move through his day, and like how he approached this job. it was quite inspiring, but also really important for me to understand the meaning of this letter room, or the mail room, as it's called, and what it means to people that are incarcerated, and how incredibly painful it is to have that be your main source of communication to your family, and then sometimes having letters taken away without any explanation, and just like understanding the importance of letters. And because I wanted to tell a story that, by focusing on one small part of the prison system, could put a light on all the things that are wrong. But I think we can all understand from imagining not being able to communicate with our family and relying on letters, that what an awful situation that is, and how we're removed of something very essential, the right to privacy and human right, really. So it was just kind of, trying to tell that in a different way. So it was important for me to understand also on both sides, what does it mean? What does this letter room mean for the people that work there? And everyone hated working in the letter room. So that was also something I added, that he was like really upset that he gets to sit there and it's really boring. He's like locked in his own room.
But I just wanted to add, he took a mundane task and he made it something much bigger than what it was, because it could be a very mundane task, right? Well, let me ask you one last thing. For those directors out there that I'm sure are going through tough times finding money, can you just talk just very briefly about your financial partner in this, and how fortunate you were to have them so committed?
I mean, Topic is just quite an amazing company, because they really believe in short films, and it's hard to find. I think they're often not prioritized, and it's hard to find a place to show them when you make them, and you spend a lot of energy, and they're often very small budgeted. So I'm incredibly grateful to find a collaborator on this that could come in with some funding that were really cared about this format. It wasn't like a little thing that they just do, and then it's something that they really believe in. And I just hope to see more of that, because I think it's a brilliant format, especially for someone like me who hasn't done fiction before, and trying, the powers of that, or like wrestling with all that. It's a brilliant format, but it's not prioritized very much. But they were extraordinary and really believed in the story, and made it happen. So
all the difference. Yeah. Well, that's good. All right, Dana. Next up is Soul. I feel like so many people might have seen it, but let's just say someone might have missed it for whatever reason. Just tell us a little bit about it, and also give us an idea of what you were hoping people might take away from it, because it certainly is a very special film.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say Soul is a film about, we really wanted people to do a self-examination of their own lives, was the hope. And by telling a story through our main character, Joe Gardner, who's a passionate teacher and jazz musician. He's about to get his big shot, play in the jazz club with the great Dorothea Williams, and he falls in a manhole, and he ends up he ends up in the great before. And so we were really excited to not go to the great beyond, which a lot of films have done, but really go to a place that where do our souls come from? And so there was a lot of discovery and fun and research in that process. But really, we were just hoping that people would take a look at their lives to see how they were spending their own time. And, if they define themselves by their work or their passions, kind of what happens if that changes or goes away. Those were kind of the main themes that we were talking about throughout the years of making it.
And did you do any particular research with people that might have had near-death experiences, or spiritual people, or did you kind of zero in on, like you said, the great before? Tell us about some of the process that you went through.
Yeah, I mean, we really talked to all kinds of religious and spiritual leaders, even shamans, and we went on spiritual journeys to find who our spirit animals were, all kinds of fun things. Mostly, we wanted to just see how they spoke, like what they said about the soul and where it comes from. And also to avoid land mines and not make sure we weren't pissing anyone off. And what's really interesting is everyone most the religious leaders really talk about the soul in a very had very common themes, and a lot of the discrepancies come in when you talk about afterlife, but not really so much the before life. And so that's why we had a lot of fun in getting to create a world there. So yeah, there's a lot of research involved, like years of research, constant.
Wow, I bet that was great. You could probably write a little thing on that, dealing with shamans.
Yeah, I learned a lot.
Now, talk to us a little bit about the character Joe Gardner. First, I'm curious, and maybe it was just random, but was there any significance to his name? Was it always Joe Gardner, and did that mean something in particular to yourself or your director?
Yeah, I mean, we wanted Joe to feel like a very normal, relatable guy, and we kind of came up with the average Joe, so that's where we got Joe from. And Gardner, I don't remember where the Gardner piece came from, to be honest, but we wanted it to sound kind of like a normal name.
Right. And then what about the fact that he was a jazz musician? Was this sort of your secret goal of maybe exposing a younger generation that might not have been familiar with jazz to learn about it or hear it? Or was it just, or you just like jazz?
Well, I mean, it became that. In the beginning, we tried different things. I mean, we tried actor. I think we tried scientist. We landed on musician because we thought that could be really fun to watch on screen. But also, we specifically landed on jazz because it felt like a very noble. Like you're not going into jazz to get famous or rich. You go into jazz because you are passionate about it and you love it. And we ended up coming across a master class with Herbie Hancock, where he talks about playing with Miles Davis, and he just told this great story that just landed so perfectly on the theme of the film that we were like what we were trying to say. And it kind of just all clicked. We were like, jazz was the way to go. And so that it kind of bloomed from there.
And did you have to, again, different kind of research, but did you immerse yourself into the world of, because jazz is so many different types of jazz. So in addition to Herbie Hancock, did you really have to get familiar with the genre?
Yeah, and it was, I mean, I feel so lucky. We got to go to New York, and it was research of going to jazz clubs and meeting with all kinds of different musicians. I mean, we were lucky enough to have Herbie Hancock and Quincy Jones as consultants on the film, but we really wanted to find musicians that were working the nightclubs in New York City or New Orleans, like the jazz cities in the country. And because most of them are teachers during the day or have different jobs in the day, and then they take the train in at night to do their gigs. So we had a lot of consultants and partners on the film that really gave so much to Joe as a character, but just as the world itself.
I think that's just great. And then before we wrap up, can you talk a little, like I was speaking to Corey about the voice casting, and was it important to you all to have a real musician play the voice of Joe? And tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jamie Foxx, I think, was in our minds from the very beginning, because not only is he an incredible dramatic actor and comedian, but because he is a musician in his own right. And I didn't even know until we started to get to know him that he played classical music and actually went to music school and was a pianist himself. So I knew he was a musician, but I learned so much more that actually he started on the piano playing classical. So I think he brought so much to the character and knowing that world for sure.
And then last question, I just thought of something else. So whereas Trish was talking about how she had worked with David Fincher and they had a trust level and a shorthand and a mutual admiration and respect, is that similar to the way you are with Pete Docter? Because I know you've worked with him before. How was it working with him on this? And does that kind of years of working together make for a much better collaboration?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. It's like there's that trust there as you get to know someone, and as you go through, battle together of like you work so hard on these films, and things come up that you have to be honest with each other. So the fact that we had that shorthand in those past relationships and experiences together, I think absolutely you just build that trust for sure.
Yep, it's special. Well, all right, Garrett, you're up next. So Garrett, I was thinking, well, first I would like to ask you to describe what the doc is about, but it's a little hard because this doc is so many things. It's hard to sum up, but I'm going to just let you kind of take a stab at it and then we'll jump right in. To me it was so much about resilience and family and loneliness and forgiveness, but tell us in your words how you describe it.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I just want to say it's so awesome to be here with you all. So thanks for organizing this, and you all are amazing. And you're right. I think actually, what's your film about is like the hardest question ever because it just, at least for me, I find it to be so difficult. But it's it's a love story that spans a little over 2 decades, and really centers itself around a family matriarch, Fox Rich, who spends every day for 21 years fighting for the unification of her family, while her husband is at Angola State Prison, which is a private prison in Louisiana. And they both actually were sentenced for a robbery that they both committed in the early 90s. And I think, as you said, Madeline, the film it's about resilience, it's about resistance, it's certainly about love, but it's really about forgiveness, and the role that forgiveness can play, not only in the ecosystem of this one family, but in the whole world right now.
Right, it's true. But a deep unconditional love, not, and I say unconditional because there's a million reasons why she could have easily walked away, you know? So and vice versa, even though he's in prison. By the way, it makes me think of Elvira's film. Did the character write letters? Was there letter writing going on between them? Speaking of the letter room,
There
Elvira.
Yeah, there was letter writing. I mean, in our case, it was more, I mean, part of the film is made up of a home personal archive, of Fox Rich that she had about 100 hours of a personal archive that I actually wasn't aware of when I was filming. And that she ended up handing to me on our last day of shooting. I thought I was making a short film. It ended up being my first feature-length film as a result of this 100 hours of footage. But that archive really was actually it was two things. It was her personal diary. It was certainly a form of therapy. Fox is talking to him through the camera part of this time. But it also was sort of like this manifestation, I think, of her bringing him home. It was her recording memories that she was determined for him to see when he would come home. So there wasn't letters, but there was, I think, there was something that played a role that in the same way that letters and writing letters do.
Right. I love it. It's like she was keeping everything for him so he could pick up where he left off when he came home.
Yeah.
Just his
Yeah.
gift. Well,
Yes.
something that you and Trish have in common is, so obviously this film was shot in black and white, which I think was brilliant, but was it to enhance the story? Tell us your decision when you were for black and white.
Well, it really started off because I made a short film called Alone, which was 13 minutes long, and was also looking at incarceration from a woman's point of view, which to me was really important because I think we're finally starting to talk about incarceration in a mainstream way, but very often it is around the facts, right, and not so much around the effects of the facts and the impact that this has on love, on mothers, on children, on families, on loved ones. And so all of this sort of aesthetics and the formal choices that I made in that short film I knew were going to also be in this second film because I consider the second film to be a sister film. I see these two films always to be in conversation with one another. I see that there can be many, many stories that are made from a woman's point of view, from a family's point of view. And this is a start at two of them. And there's 2.3 million people that are incarcerated in our country right now. So there's, if not double, triple, quadruple that number of stories that can be told from this perspective. So the black and white was really a way of connecting these two films together. And ultimately, it kind of, because all of her archive actually was in this beautiful, lush color. And we had experimented with having it be in color, but I kind of felt like, because we're going between the past and the present, it's almost like you could feel all tenses of time. And we really wanted the film to feel the way memories actually feel in life, which is that when one remembers something, there's no distinction between 20 years ago or 10 minutes ago. It all becomes present, right? And so we wanted the film to mimic that exact feeling. And the black and white sort of became the saran wrap. It allowed it to feel like a river instead of hopping between stones,
Right. But I also think it made you pay extra special attention because something was missing, something was different. It was a great it's a great vehicle. You mentioned about time and talk about the title because it means it's not just a double entendre, it's probably like a quadruple entendre. But was that always when you did Alone, did you always know I'm going to do time, or was that always the title? Tell us. I'm always fascinated by those.
Yeah, no, I mean, I titling films for me is the hardest part of making a film, actually. I think it's so difficult and it's so definitive, and it really, I'm more interested in the expansiveness of filmmaking, and filmmaking being in conversations with other films, being in conversations with the rest of the world with different ideas. And so the title can be quite, if not done right, it can be quite limiting to a certain extent. But time, the thing I liked about the title Time was that it didn't actually elicit any kind of specific image for me. Time has been used in various ways, whether you think about Pol Pot beginning time, restarting time, right, in Cambodia, using it as a weapon, right? Or time being a marking point of the industrialization of contemporary society, of modernity, right? The way in which all of a sudden our days are now structured around railroads, around industry, around capitalism. Time being used as something that is very much connected to human labor. Time being used as a way of holding families suspended in space. Time being something that's completely abstract and also literal. There are so many different ways in which we can enter the concept of time, and yet it was a driving force for the family every single day. That was also quantified next to the value system of human life. And so, to me, it felt like it was sort of inevitable. I mean, I remember I did some voiceover sessions with the family, and I had them just kind of ruminate on their definition of time and their relationship to time, what it means to grow up without your father physically there for 21 years. Instead of it being me as a filmmaker defining time for them, what were their definitions of time? So it was a theme that was pervasive, that was a part of the film, a part of daily life. And I also think it's going to mean something different to everybody who watches the film, and everyone has a different relationship to time. I can see a clock right behind you and that has like a totally different, I could go on and on about clocks.
But it changed the way that we used to very dismissively say, oh, a prisoner's doing time. But after seeing your film Time, I think of doing time in a different way. So
yes.
Yeah. So I think
Yes.
that's great. Anyway, yes, I know this clock, by the way, that you mentioned, I've had with me. It was the first clock I had in my very first job at Coca-Cola. And so I've been in business now. That clock has been with me for over 35 years. That clock goes with me everywhere. I know.
That's
isn't that crazy?
amazing.
I know. And a friend of mine is like, oh, you need a more up-to-date clock. So I bought this fancy digital clock, but I could never see it. And I'm like, no, I have to have my clock now. So so old, it's back in style. Anyway. All right. Well, next up is Michelle. And Michelle, I love Sound of Metal so much. So I just have to ask you again, for those that might have not had a chance to see it, just give us a quick little sentence about what it's hard to also say what this is about in one sentence, but it's not about what you think it is. So tell us.
Well, Sound of Metal is a film about a drummer who has a band with his girlfriend, and all his life seems to be like really, really nice and really cozy, and life seems to be really involved. And one day he starts to lose his hearing. So all the world that he knows is completely. One day he was like playing drums, and then the next day he cannot continue to work on what his passion is. So he doesn't know what to do, and then it's the start of his journey through finding and things that came to him, and trying to first of all trying both things, and then trying to accept the world as it comes, the new world that he's not used to. Everything changes in his life. He must to learn sign language, and then he's trying to recover his hearing. He he's very mad and sad, and what he's struggling in this journey is a story.
Well, I can tell the way you talk about it. You're so proud of it, and as you should be. But I wanted to also mention again that three of the nominated artisans are from Mexico. So you knew them, you worked together as a team. Can you just tell us? Because I read that many people in Mexico, they go to other places, Europe, the United States, to learn the craft, but then you guys all came back to Mexico. Tell us.
Exactly. I yes, I didn't study cinema films here in Mexico. I came to France, but then for me it was important to came to Mexico to make things here happen. And so with Jaime, one of the recording mixers, we have been working together like for 15 years, and doing a lot of film together. And then with Carlos Cortez, he's the main mixer at this amazing studio at Tepoztlan, who is like an hour and a half from Mexico City. It's in the middle of the mountains. So it was like a really special place to go and mix a really like loud and distracting and alternating all the sounds and silence in the middle of the like a national park. So with
Wow.
Jaime and
God, that sounds amazing. And then we talked before about Trish working with David Fincher and with Dana working with Pete Docter. So had you worked with Darius Martyr before, or was this first time?
yes, it was the first time, and also with Nico, the sound designer, it was our first time. And what happened is that Darius contacted Nicolas, and he wanted like a different approach for sound. He wanted like to experiment and to create new things, and so he was looking for a different approach, and that's why he came to and arrived to Splendor of Postland with us, try new things and all this. But it was the first time, and really, really like enjoyed being together. We became friends, and it was like we knew each other before. And of course, it was this like trust also that began to really flow and to try new things. And so it was really important. And it also was really important to well, yes, the film, but also all this being together doing the film and
Mm.
spending all this like journey of being there all together, because we had to sleep all together. We went to eat together, and we discussed together like for weeks. And so this was like a really great experience. And also the director and the sound designer to really trying to care about sound and to really like trying to do the best for this was really amazing.
Well, and not only that, but you were able to get what you do in the title, The Sound of Metal. You're like, Darius, can you please call it The Sound of Metal? Um,
But
oh,
finding
please go.
title is really important. And he mentioned, like, sometimes, have you ever been working on a film? I know you work on sound, but have you ever been working on a film where the main title contains the word sound? It's really important for me to make a different approach for sound. Yes, it was a really nice title.
Right. Well, tell us. So I must ask about working with Riz Ahmed. What
Mm,
because sound was so much a part of his evolving. So you first create like the heavy metal, loud, crazy sound, and he's trying to get used to being deaf, and so there's this staticky, and then there's the sound of silence. So can you take us through because it must have been very different as the sound, as the re-recording mixer to deal with this. It's like three different
yeah,
characters.
exactly. The first of all is the sound, the word as we all know, and it had to be like really like a contrast between the world that we all are used to. Sometimes we do not take enough care of what we already had, like the sighting or the hearing or the taste, and what happens if we lose one thing of that. So yes, the first part was the sound and trying to focus on that. Then Reese trying to to be in the being in this place with the deaf community and to trying to get to, and he doesn't want to be there. He wants to leave, but then he has to change and to commit. If he wants to continue, he must change, adapt, and then he goes. Even if he doesn't want to adapt, he has a cochlear implant that is all this like metal part that it's really different, and where Nicholas and Darius made a lot of research of how deaf and how losing the hearing was like.
Mm, God, just fascinating. Well, I encourage if you haven't seen it, like I said, it's not what you think it is because so many people, not so many, but a few of people I know are like, oh, it's about heavy metal. Oh, it is so not about that. It is so about so many other things. Yes, so it's great. Well, congratulations. Now
Thank you.
we our last but certainly not least is my counterpart, Madeline, the other Madeline. So
Hello
I must
again.
ask, so Burrow, this little special short was paired with Soul on Disney Plus, released on Christmas Day. And although I'm sure at first you were like, oh, I'm sad it's not in theaters, I can't even imagine these crazy numbers, but it had over 8 billion with a B minutes of watch time. So how did that? It must have made you feel great to know that your little
I
short
didn't
was
know
seen by
that.
1 billion minutes of watch time. I thought that was so
Wow.
great, fascinating. So how did it make you feel coming out Christmas Day during a pandemic, but that it was seen worldwide by so many people? Must have been
Gosh.
thrilling.
Well, yeah. Well, the Spark Shorts program at Pixar it's still kind of like a relatively new thing for us. So for it to be put in front of Soul was already like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And Pete Docter is a huge hero of mine. So just that acknowledgement alone of like, oh man, Pete liked my movie enough to put it in front of his, great. And so really as things progress and it was like, oh no theater, I wasn't too bothered by it because I didn't think it would really go to theaters when I was making it anyway. And already getting Pete's stamp of approval was kind of all of the acknowledgement I ever wanted. So yeah, when it went on to Disney Plus, something that really made me excited was I had made the short in particular to have a lot of detail in the backgrounds and to make sure that there are tiny little hidden things. You probably won't see the inside of every burrow your first watch. So for it to be on streaming right away means that after you watch it, if you feel like you missed something, you can just watch it right over again. And I know as a kid, I loved to rewatch stuff when I was young. So I hoped kids got some like good rewatch value out of that.
Yes, I think that's great. Well, can I go back to something you mentioned briefly? Because you're actually the second filmmaker I met that was part of the Pixar Spark
Yeah,
program.
Rosie.
So,
Yeah.
right, Rosie was with us last year. So this has been going on for a while, and you tell us about it.
Yeah, the Spark Shorts program, I don't actually remember when it started. There's been a couple rounds of it now. It's sort of like 2 films get made a year at Pixar in between the sort of gigantic ships of like the features going at the same time. And you only have 6 months to make it. So they kind of give you that's like your ticket. It's like, okay, you're 6 months. We'll see you then. And then no one really checks on you for like 6 months as you try to like pull together something. Be like, is anybody free? Come over here, help with this. And for Rosie's and mine, I think we both chose 2D because it offered us a lot more in terms of resources for the amount of time that we had. Like to draw a very detailed background of like a hedgehog's living room. Like you can kind of do that in a day or two. But if you were to model that and shade it and light it, like that would take way too long. It would take like the 6 months just to do one room. So for me, it made a lot of sense to do 2D. And luckily, Rosie paved the way for me with Kitbull.
Right. I think it's great. Well, I must ask you, speaking of those little animals, looking at your past credits, I think you love animals. You've done dogs, you've done bears, and now you've done rabbits. So, what are these animals? What is it about animals that you love so much? And then, will you also show us your teacup?
Oh yes,
Uh-huh.
I mean I love animals obviously just because they're so cute. And for me, rabbit in particular was my childhood nickname. I don't know if you can tell, but I have pretty large front teeth. And I just love rabbits. I grew up sort of in the California hills, and we would really see like these tiny little cottontail, like brush rabbits, so small. And I would see them like run into their burrows. And I always like so badly wanted to know what they were hiding in there. And I think just animals in general, I am a fan of like animation, pantomime. I like trying to express things without dialogue, and animals obviously do that all the time, every day. So it just feels like a good fit. And just they're the best. I have a photo of my dog as my lock screen forever and always.
And can you show us your little teapot you showed us earlier with the little?
Oh my gosh! I didn't hear that part of the question. Yes, I can.
Oh,
This
now
is
there you go.
the branding of my life is rabbits.
Right.
It's nice to have a quick and easy animal choice for all themes.
I love it. Themes. I've got to ask you, just getting back to the short for a minute. Asking for help is sort of a theme in the short. And I was just wondering, because I think as women, this is something sometimes we're not very good at. I know I have a terrible time asking for help. And many of you may feel the same way. So was this something based on your personal experience? Why did you interject that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, 100%. The whole short is based off of my experience entering Pixar. I was very young. I was like 22. I was 6 out of like 50 or 60 storyboard artists. 6 were women. I was like the 6th. So there was a pressure to prove my worth, to make sure that I deserved to be there with every storyboard pitch that I would do. And I think because of that extra fear and wanting to look strong and tough and talented, there was like an added difficulty of like, I'm not going to just turn to my coworkers and ask them how to do a difficult camera move. It'll be more impressive if I just show up on the pitch day and click through it and it looks like, wow, what a genius. But to make that happen, you have to like work late, work weekends, and eventually that does isolate you, and it becomes an unhealthy habit that you can really only maintain that kind of work style for a couple years until suddenly you realize, oh no, I'm in a lot of trouble, like health-wise, mental health-wise. I'm not connecting to people anymore. So yeah, it's 100% the sort of, I don't know, self-consciousness, there's shame there. Yeah.
But it's funny because you mentioned that about, oh, and people will think you're a genius as if you have to constantly prove. Women tend to do that sometimes. We're constantly proving our worth. Well, I know you must be a bit of an overachiever because Corey, you're right or left, you also worked on Onward. So
Yes.
how did you handle Onward and Arrow? Did they overlap simultaneous, or were they spaced out and just came out?
I think they were spaced out, but I will say that Onward, in my time on that movie, I was sort of elevated from storyboard artist to story lead for the first time, which meant that I had a bigger voice in like the brainstorm rooms that like Corey and I were in, and it even took me a while to warm up to like learn how to speak up in those rooms. But thanks to all my time on Onward, by the time I got to the Spark Short, which happened afterwards, I was already so much better prepared to like express myself and feel confident to bring up a problem or like voice an opinion. Yeah, so it was after Onward, and then in between Domishi's movie Turning Red, sort of squeezed in the middle there.
Wow, I love it. Well, we are almost out of time, but before we conclude, let's do a quick round robin. You guys into it? So I'm going to start with you, Elvira. Just choose a number between 1 and 8, and I will ask you a question. Okay, 1 and 8. 8. All right. What was a favorite book, movie, or song? I put song in there, Tiara, for you. Favorite book, movie, or song that inspired you in your career?
In my career, wow, the whole thing. Oh no, that's such a hard question. I don't know.
8.
No, that's just impossible. That's unfair. Does anyone else know what they would answer?
Well, then just favorite movie. What's the one? It could even be a guilty pleasure movie. We'll get you off the hook.
Well, this is not a guilty pleasure movie, but I love Alma Harrell's Bombay Beach, and it has continued to inspire all my work. So it's one of those incredible pieces of art I think that was made. That's documentary, but also it just did all the things. So yeah, that's one. That's one. Oh. I said something.
That's good enough. Great. All right, Michelle. Between 1 and 8, but don't do 8. So between 1 and 7.
Don't do 8.
What number?
4.
Okay, you ready? 4. All right, Michelle. If money were no object, okay, you had all the financing in the world, and you could make any film or on any subject or genre, what would it be?
It's a really I'm not sure. It's a really with no limits of finance.
Right. Yeah. No. Well, you want us to come back to you? Think about, or how about you want me to give you another one? All right. Here's one. I'll give you one. I'll choose one for you. Who's the best boss you ever had, and why?
The best boss is perhaps the one that it's not like it's like trusting you and letting you like propose things and like being in a relation of yes, trust, I think, and that's the for anyone trying to do their best, and I think that's the way things flow back.
Right. Trish, if this were yours, I know you would have answered David Fincher. All right, Trish, you're next. Okay, pick a number between 1 and 8. I'll know the ones that we've already done.
5. How about 5?
Trish, are you on social media?
Oh, let me pick another number.
Okay.
I'm probably the worst person at social media. I
Okay.
enjoy looking at it and following all of you, but I'm not great at posting anything.
So many aren't. Okay, that's all right. Do you
You're
travel a
not
lot?
the
I go
worst
through the
because I don't
world
even do it.
affairs of like post something good and then the world's going to shit. What do I do? You know?
Right. Totally right. Do you travel a lot? You travel quite a bit, I'm
I
sure.
do travel. Mhm.
All right. That's you. It's your best travel tip.
Oh, my best travel tip. Well, I have kind of a little package I kind of fly with. So I'm a big advocate of apple cider vinegar for everything, especially food poisoning. So I have a little travel kit I go with. I have apple cider vinegar, oil of oregano, also
Yeah.
the cure-all for everything. I travel to really random places and I like to experiment with local food. So I travel apple cider vinegar, oil of oregano, and then on the selfish side, I love to bring like an oil for my face. And I used to always bring a sanitizer to spray, but now we all do that. So yeah, those are my travel
Right.
tips. Just bring, you gotta have a little
Yeah.
care package to travel with.
We followed your lead. I can't believe you talked about oil of oregano. I went through a phase of oil of oregano. That stuff burns.
I call it a face melter. I do a shot like 3 times a week of oil of oregano, apple cider vinegar, lemon, cayenne, and ginger, and just shoot it.
Damn. All right. All right, Dana. Dana,
Yes.
you got it. What's a habit that you've had the hardest time breaking?
Well, I've had back issues for the last 2 years, and so now I'm having to retrain myself how to sit, stand, stretch, like I guess posture. See me now, I'm like this. It's like, okay.
Oh,
My mom would be so mad at me.
you would, but your posture is good though. But you know that's funny because slouching
Working on
that is a habit. Okay.
it. I know.
All right.
It's like,
Tiara, when you were little, what did you want to be when you were young? Did you want to be something?
When I
A
was
vet.
little, when I was 12, I said I was gonna be a singer and win a Grammy.
Wow.
Nice.
There you
Dreams
go.
coming
Nice.
true.
Just what I
Yeah.
kept sticking. Yep.
Gosh, I love it. Okay, Madeline, where were you when you heard that you were nominated?
Oh, I was asleep. I didn't think it was going to happen, so I didn't set my alarm early. My producer was awake though, and I woke up to his text that was from like 2 hours earlier. I was like, call me! And I was like, oh, oops. Hello. Yeah. I just didn't
He's
think it
probably
was
like,
going to happen.
why isn't she calling me? I love
Sleeping.
All right, Garrett, if you could shadow anyone for a week, anybody, who would it be?
Oh, can I choose number 2?
Yes. Number
Yes.
two. Okay. You want me to tell you number two? Number two is perfect for you. What is the one thing that motivates you every day?
See, I knew 2 I'd be able to handle. What motivates me every day is being able to change the world, honestly, by being kind, and by leading by example, by being the thing that I want to become, um, and trying to insert that into any space that I'm in.
Oh, that's great. I love that. All right, Corey, you're up. Um, Corey, I'm going to give you a choice, okay? What do
Okay.
you complain about more than anything else? And what is one trick that you've seen on a set that keeps morale high? Which one do you like better?
I think
Or
I'll
both?
go to the latter. I'll go with the latter one. I've been working so hard to not complain in the last few years because it seems trite with everything that happens in the world. So I've actively been trying not to work on complaining. For me, it's all about teamwork and all about getting people to collaborate together in a fun way. So I spend a lot of time on my shows kind of getting different departments and different groups of people together and having them talk about the work they do, because sometimes especially in animation, our films are so long that a lot of departments don't even know what the upstream or downstream departments really do, because it can get pretty siloed. And so I love to shake it up and make sure that everybody kind of knows what the other folks are doing on the film. And so I like to do that. I think it's great for morale to learn what everybody else is doing around.
Yeah, that's lovely. Great. Well, guys, I promised Roger and everybody that we would be out on time, and we have done it because that's what we do. So I want to just take a moment and thank each and every one of you for being here and for spending time with us, watching, sharing.
Congratulations, ladies. Thanks, ladies.
Yeah.
Nice to meet everyone.
Everybody.
Congratulations, everyone.